Sumit, you are joined. You have to unmute, Sumit.
Sorry. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible, Sumit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Sumit. Just trying to put it on YouTube also.
Okay.
So that's where it was, the confusion is coming.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
No issues.
Satish, welcome.
Hi, Satish, sir.
Satish, నేను ఒక లింక్ పంపిస్తున్నా, which I'm sending to everyone. In fact, నేను యూట్యూబ్ లో లైవ్ కూడా చేస్తున్నా. People who are really interested in knowledge and who have found it difficult to pay that 100 rupees, getting irritated with that small payment. So let them watch it in ప్రొఫైల్స్ వచ్చేసాయి. జస్ట్ ఒక్కసారి సంతోష్ కాల్ చేసి సర్టిఫికేట్స్ మళ్ళీ పంపిమని చెప్పండి నాకు.
అదేనా
మెయిల్ ఐడికి పంపిమని చెప్పండి సంతోష్ కి. సర్టిఫికెట్స్ నిన్న పంపించాడో ఎప్పుడో అర్థమైతే లేదు. టూ మెనీ మెయిల్స్, ఐ లాస్ దట్.
నాతోనే చెప్పింది మీరు. స్టూడెంట్స్ పంపించిన ఆఫీస్ స్టాఫ్ కి.
పుస్తకం పంపి యూట్యూబ్ లో కూడా ఉంది. యూట్యూబ్ జస్ట్ నాకు సంతోష్ ఒక సర్టిఫికేట్ పంపించమని చెప్పండి. యూట్యూబ్ లో కూడా పెట్టేశాను నేను. ఓకే, మీరు ఎక్కడ అంటే అక్కడ కానీ ఏం పర్లేదు. ఓకే రైట్. లింక్ పంపించి ఇప్పుడే నేను పెట్టాను చూడండి అందరికి. ఓకే, మీరు ఏం పంపించండి. మెంబర్షిప్ మీటింగ్ ఐడి తోటి ఉంటుంది కదా, చాలా.
Can I share my screen and see if that slide deck is working?
You can.
Sir, already I have given powers to share screen, Sumit.
Sorry, sir.
Already I had given. Yeah, not a problem.
It's better I present the slide because it will be in my control.
Yes, yes. The controls are for you now. You present the screen. You only run the screen.
So okay, sir. Okay.
You have to just make it as a slideshow.
Sure, sure.
Perfect.
What is the audience, sir, expected?
See, look, ideally, we till yesterday we always had 200 plus audience. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yesterday it was 149 because I should not be saying any recording is stopped. But I'll tell you, we have a rule in ICA that I cannot do free program.
Okay. Okay. Understood.
There is very stupid rule here. What
I
that
agree.
rule says is you cannot pay for 5 to 6 programs at a time.
Understood.
So for paying the each program, what is happening is that a member has to spend a lot of time.
Understood.
So members are virtually not very happy. See, more than members, I'm not happy.
Okay.
Okay. So what is happening is today we got about 75 registrations.
Okay.
So what I did was in the see I
YouTube.
took a call, Sumit. I said
Understood.
CP is not everything.
Correct.
I know no member objects for that 100 rupees payment. Everyone will be happy to pay 500 also.
Barabar. Correct.
So what I did was I said, look, those who don't want CP hours can also join by logging in, or they can also watch it in YouTube.
Correct.
So this is the first time I opened the YouTube link so early. Otherwise, 4 times I had opened the YouTube link in post lockdown, but that was only after the number touching 580, 585.
Understood.
But today, from the beginning, I opened the YouTube link because
Yeah.
let them see.
Yeah. Recently, there was a webinar by GST and with ICI. That was on YouTube only.
That's what we are doing on Zoom because see, again, what happens is when you give a CP, you require attendance.
Understood. Correct. Yeah.
So what about Abhinav? He is joining her?
Yeah, he's joining, sir. He just texted me. 1 second.
Not a చెప్పండి మంచి పని చేస్తుంది
One minute is joining, sir.
No problem, Smith. No problem.
Yeah.
I think he's joined almost.
Yeah, he's joined. Yeah.
Abhinav, you are muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's not audible now.
Yeah, it's audible.
Just a second, I'll take the
Hi,
call.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Good. By God's grace, by Karuna's grace.
Satish sir, where are you sitting now? In your office or ICA?
No, I'm at home only actually.
Acha, at your home. Okay.
Yeah. No, office, no staff are coming now. Maximum, if they are coming also, by 4 they are leaving.
Okay. Great.
So alone sitting at office also boring.
Better at home, you'll get food some.
Yes.
Correct. Abhinav, the screen is visible to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Quickly, you can just stop sharing the screen, Sumit, for
Sure. I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. Quickly, let me just share with you first. Welcome, Sumit. Welcome, Abhinav. Informally, we'll welcome you again. Am I in? Oh, sorry.
1 second, sir. How to remove this?
Yes, on the top red, you'll see stop share.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So welcome both. Informally, I welcome both of you. And
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Which and what we do is come what way we start the program at 6 sharp. People will join. Okay, as I told you, Sumit, today I also put it on the YouTube, so that's also one new thing which is happening. We have some staggered attendance here and there.
Okay.
Second thing is what we'll do. I'll not take more than 2 minutes. Okay. I'll just welcome the members and then hand it over to Satish. He will introduce both of you, and both of you have planned how to go about it. You can take up. I have one request. Generally, members put questions in Q&A.
Okay.
So, if we can leave some time for Q&A, that would be great.
Got it.
After the session only, not necessarily in between, unless it is urgent.
Let us not go to, because if 1 or 2 questions keep dragging, then it would be a problem.
Correct. I agree.
So in fact, the numbers are a big suspense for me today.
No, within 2 minutes already
also is
15 added. Within 2 minutes, 15 added.
Yeah, I know, because people will get added, but there will be more. I'm still expecting 100 plus attendance today. But had that fee part and all would not have been there, we would have easily had 350 plus. Abhinav, you're from Hyderabad?
Yeah, I'm from Hyderabad. In Hyderabad for the last 5 years. I was in Delhi earlier, before 2015.
And generally what happens, Abhinav, is that I'm just beside the system only. I'll not go even 1 minute, I'll not go here or there. But to have a proper bandwidth, we switch off our videos.
Sure.
You don't bother about the chats coming, even if there is a talk of low volume or something on the chat, you don't try to answer that. I will take care of it. And
Sure.
there are too many people talking about that. I will come back and I'll tell you.
Sure. Okay.
So we are just about few seconds to go to start. Yeah, it's 6 p.m. sharp. So as promised, we'll start the program. On behalf of Hyderabad branch of SRC of ICA, I take pleasure in welcoming the young and dynamic speakers, only from the age point of view and not referring to the knowledge. Young and dynamic speakers, Sumit Setia and Abhinav Srivatsav on this all-important topic, e-invoicing under GST. I'm sure today when they have started it, they have tried to keep very high levels and all. But just remember what Mr. Nani Palkiwala had said at the Nizam College ground when service tax of 5% was introduced. He said, please don't go home. Please directly go sit opposite to government officers, block the roads, do whatever you can, but stop this thing called service tax. Otherwise, in few years, you'll find that every item will be covered under service tax and the rates would be much higher. But of course, I'm not encouraging you to go and do all these things. I'd only like to tell you that very soon, the high limits would be reduced, and I think most of us would start getting into invoicing. So we at Hyderabad branch thought that it's definitely a wiser move to talk about the e-invoicing from this stage itself. And though most of you are covered, I'm sure all of us would be covered with this. Friends, before I hand it over to Satish for introduction, I have two things to say. One is that, this is a chargeable program of 100 rupees. But what we have done at Hyderabad branch is that we at Hyderabad branch believe in sharing of knowledge rather than making money. And making money is the last thing in our mind. But as the rules say that every CP seminar after 1st September had to be charged, we are forced to keep a small amount. But again, we discussed and decided one thing. Look, people who want CP hours and all as well as knowledge, they can just pay and attend the program. But there are many people who have already completed the CP hours, and there are many people who are not too bothered about the CP hours, but are looking at the knowledge part of it. We thought, why should we deprive them about this opportunity? So what I did was, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but for the benefit of members, I just shared the message in any group saying that this is the meeting ID, this is the password, paid or unpaid, don't bother about it, kindly join. And just thinking that too many people might also join and it might cause some inconvenience to people who have paid. Also started this program is live on YouTube also, which I see that it's going on with just a 15 seconds delay. This program is live on the YouTube also. So friends, I'd like to know nothing against people who have paid, nothing against people who are not paid, because I know that for paying 100 rupees when it's taking 5 minutes to you, it's not good. But so we will continue to charge 100 rupees for every program, but at the same time, we will also send you messages wherein you can join and watch the program. So this is what I thought off the record I will say. And now I hand it over to Satish to introduce the two dynamic speakers so that and the speakers can take care of themselves. One gentle reminder is that all questions should be put in Q&A only so that it's easy for speakers to answer them, because questions put in the chat, we might lose them and we don't want to do that. Thank you very much. Over to you, Satish.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Hyderabad branch of SRC of ICA, I, CA Satish Kumar Velvarku, welcoming all of you who logged here on e-invoicing a new normal under GST law. I welcome our Hyderabad branch chairman CA Pankaj Kumar Trivedi sir and today's speakers CA Abhinav Srivastava and CA Sumit Setia, who are going to take us through the session on e-invoicing. As we all are new to this concept, without much wasting of your time, just I'm going to introduce today's speakers for our convenience. 1 minute, sir. Yeah, today we have CA Abhinav Srivastava. He is a partner at Indirect Taxes in BDO. His areas of experience are expertise are customs and international trade, consumption taxes, including GST, India domestic and indirect taxes. His industry expertise, financial services, including fintech, IT, ITES, pharma, healthcare, media, and his basic educational qualifications are he is a chartered accountant and Bachelor of Commerce with accounts and audit. His expert summary is Abhinav is a partner with Indirect Tax Practice and operates out of Hyderabad office. Prior to joining BDO, Abhinav worked with larger accounting firms and he has over 12 years of experience in the field of indirect taxes. He has worked on several assignments in the areas of tax structuring, due diligence, diagnostic reviews, litigation across various sectors like IT, ITES, pharma, healthcare, media, education, etc. Abhinav is also actively involved in advocacy with the policymakers, representing various industry associations and chambers. His authorized various articles pertaining to indirect taxes in tax-related publications. His select key projects are ERP implementation, giving inputs during design and testing phase, setting up related assistance, advising one of the leading multi-level marketing companies with respect to structuring of construction contracts with respect to their new factories in India, assisted number of clients in transiting to GST. He designed and executed virtual tax planning programs in association with the leading educational service provider in India. This is a small introduction of Mr. Abhinav. Now I am going to introduce Sumit Setia, CS Sumit Setia also. He is assistant manager at indirect tax at BDO. His areas of expertise are consumption taxes, including GST, India domestic indirect taxes, and he's Bahrain VAT also. He is a guest speaker at ICA, ICSA, and FICCI. His industry expertise includes IT, ITES, manufacturing, hospitality sector, life insurance. His educational qualifications are Chartered Accountant, Bachelor of Commerce with Accounts and Taxation. With this small brief introduction, I'm requesting both of you, sorry, both instead of wasting, what do you say, your time, I'm running through very fastly. Now the session comes to you, sir, both of you.
Okay, thanks to both of you for intro sort of session, and it's quite embarrassing to have such kind of introduction. I think I don't deserve too much of English, but anyways, let's come to the topic now. So, good evening to all of you first, and as you all are aware that the agenda for today is e-invoicing, and Sumit and myself will be taking this session. Now, as you are aware that e-invoicing is one of the most discussed topic these days, and the reasoning is obvious because from 1st October e-invoicing is mandatory for companies having a turnover of more than 500 crores. So and it's just a matter of few months before they make it mandatory for other smaller companies also. So that's just a matter of time. Now, while we will talk about the concept of e-invoicing, we will also try to touch upon various other functions of business which would get impacted because of e-invoicing. Now, the reason for doing this is that a lot of people think that e-invoicing is essentially a IT project, and it's just the invoicing which is getting changed. Everything else remains the same. But you will realize after during the course of this session that it is not only an IT change. A lot of things, a lot of processes might also go. Will have to be changed because of the fact that e-invoicing is getting introduced, and there the role of professional like us becomes extremely important. As far as Q&A is concerned or questions are concerned, I would request you to have patience. Maybe you can keep on putting or sort of a question in the chat box, and we will take up all the questions after the presentation is over. And in case we see any fundamental question which requires to be addressed on the spot, we will try to do that. But essentially, the idea is that we will first complete the slide deck. We should take maybe an hour's time max, or an hour and a half, and then we can sort of open the floor for question and answer session. So yeah, I think some comment.
Nothing, Abhinav.
Okay.
Abhinav, just small request, not in chat box. Let them put it in Q&A only.
Okay, Q&A. Sorry. So Q&A you can put. My only request is that just just keep on noting down your questions, and we will address all the questions after the session, after the slide deck or presentation is over. So coming to the first slide. So what is a broad agenda of this session? The first obviously is what is the coverage of e-invoicing regime. Okay, the next one is how the e-invoicing process is different from the present billing system. So what is changing in a sense? That's very important to know. Then third one is we will also discuss how the e-invoicing will impact supply chain, procurement, billing functions. What is the impact of e-invoicing on e-way bill? Okay, what is the impact of e-invoicing on GST returns? Now again, please note that a lot of changes are happening on the GST returns front also. So we will just touch upon that issue also as we move along this slide deck. What is changing from a reporting standpoint? And again, you will have some surprises in store, and we'll discuss some of those issues in the subsequent slides. What steps company needs to take to implement e-invoicing? So it's not it's not a plug and play that on 30th September you have a normal invoice, and one fine day on 1st October you can have an invoice with e-invoice and all that. So there are a couple of things which are required to be taken care of before you actually go live or implement e-invoicing, or before you can say that e-invoicing implementation is complete. So again, we will touch upon those aspects in one of the subsequent slides. And the last question, which is now a recent phenomena, people say, what if I don't comply? What if for some reason my implementation is not over by 30th September? So what are the consequences? Will the government be liberal? Will they take a liberal view of this, or they will apply the regular provisions that are there in case of default with invoicing provisions? So we will also briefly touch upon those issues also. So that's a broad layout of this presentation. Yeah, over next slide, Sumit. Okay, now what is e-invoicing? Okay, now what is changing? Let me start with this issue. So today what happens that the companies raise an invoice using their own ERP or accounting software. They sign the invoice, and then that invoice is sent to the customer. Now this process will continue. So this process is not changing. There again is a perception, or I may use a term myth, that e-invoicing is a process where government will generate invoice for you. That's not the case. You will continue to raise invoice using your own ERP or accounting software. Okay, what will change that once you raise an invoice in your system, you have to upload certain specified details about that invoice or pertaining to that invoice in a prescribed format. So I will detail, or I will explain in detail these words, but please let's hear this carefully. So they have to upload specified details of a particular invoice in a prescribed format in the government portal. That portal is called IRP, or invoice registration portal. So once the company uploads the specified details in the prescribed format in the portal, the government portal will do a verification And we will again explain you what exactly that verification stands for. But the government portal will do a backend verification based on certain parameters. Once the verification is done, they will assign or they will allot a unique code to every such invoice. Now that unique code or unique number is called IRN, invoice reference number. Okay, so they will assign a unique code to every invoice. They will also assign a QR code, a quick reference code. You must have seen QR code in a lot of bills these days. So once the government portal does a backend verification, they will assign a unique code called IRN, invoice reference number. They will assign a QR code. So the QR code and IRN is sent back to the company from that portal itself in a specified format. Okay, and then that code has to be printed on the invoice which has to be sent to the customer. So before you send your invoice to the customer, you have to print the QR code on that invoice. You have to print the IRN on that invoice. Only then it becomes a valid invoice. If you send the invoice without QR code, without all these details, then it becomes it becomes an invalid invoice, which will tantamount to non-compliance. So what is changing essentially is that you will continue to raise your invoice, but you have to get that authentication done by the government. That authentication happens through an online mechanism, which has been sort of set up, and that portal is called IRP portal. Now the idea is that they want to standardize the format in which invoice is uploaded in the government portal. So what will happen eventually that once you upload those invoices, the same details, or once you upload the details pertaining to that invoice, the same details can also be used by the government portal to generate e-way bill wherever applicable. And the same details can also be used by the government portal to prepare returns, or to at least populate returns to that extent. So which means that to that extent you don't have to again log in and spend time in return preparation. So the idea is that once you upload those details in that format, the same set of details can be used to generate e-way bill. The same set of details can also be used to prepare returns for the company. So that's a broad structure as far as e-invoicing is concerned. Sumit, next slide, please. Okay, now, just hold on for some time. We will address all your questions. Now what is the implementation date? It is from 1st October. Now, people are asking whether, and this is applicable for companies having turnover of more than 500 crores. So there are people who are asking, what if a company who has a turnover of less than 500 crores, if they also want to implement, can they do that? The answer is they can't do that, because government is very clearly saying that for those companies, they have to wait. So under the earlier avatar, earlier version, it was optional for other companies. This time that is not even optional. So for other companies who want to implement e-invoice, they have to wait till we get a formal clarification from the government. But otherwise, it's applicable from 1st October. The expectation is that even for other companies having a turnover of more, less than say 500 but more than 100 crores, they will make it mandatory from 1st November or 1st December. So it's just a matter of time. But as far as 1st October deadline is concerned, it is only for companies having a turnover of more than 500 crores. Now, as far as applicability criteria is concerned, as I mentioned, that it is for more than 500 crores. Now, what is this 500 crores? It's not a turnover as per financials. It's a turnover. Yeah, so it's a turnover as per GST law. So even a stock transfer, which is not a turnover as per turnover as per financials, would be counted for computing this 500 crores limit. and they say that your 500 crores turnover could be in any of the previous 3 financial years. So if in the last year, say the turnover was 498 crores, but in say 17-18 it was say 510 crores. So even then you are getting covered. So you have to go back to last 3 years and figure out if the turnover was more than 500 crores. This is especially relevant for borderline cases, right, where your turnover was less in 1 year and more in other years. That's something which is important. Okay, now I mentioned that you have to upload specified details in a prescribed format. So those details have been specified in the form called Form GST INV01. Again, I think we will discuss some of this in more detail in the subsequent slides. Now it is obviously mandatory for B2B tax invoice, but it is not required. It is mandatory for credit notes. It is applicable for debit notes, including exports, but it is not applicable for transactions that don't attract GST except exports. Okay, so if you are making an exempt sale, that per se is not a transaction to which this e-invoicing requirements would apply. If you are doing an intra-state stock transfer, which means stock transfer within a state, and there is no GST on those transactions, on those kind of transactions, there is no requirement of having a e-invoice or IRN number or QR code. They've also mentioned that there are certain entities which are exempt from the requirements of e-invoicing regime. The first one is SEZ unit. Okay, but it is not developer, so only unit is kept out of this requirement. Then good transport agency, then insurance company, banking, NBFC, financial institution, and multiple screens. Now the debate is that whether this exemption is for the company as a whole, or this exemption is only for the specified transactions of that company. For example, in an insurance company scenario, whether all the revenue streams of that company would be exempt from the requirements of e-invoicing regime, or only the transactions which are in the nature of insurance are exempt. So that again is a matter, while I think a lot of forums, GST officials have clarified that the exemption is for services and is not for the company as a whole, but I think we need to wait for a formal clarification or a circular by the government, and we will see how the law evolves in the next couple of days. Again, the last one is they're saying multiple screens. Now, what happens to single screen? So again, I think hopefully they will issue suitable clarification so that there is consistency in application of these provision. Next slide, please, Sumit. Okay, so as I discussed that e-invoicing covers supplier invoice, credit note, debit note. It does not cover delivery challan. Very important. So any transaction that is say intrastate stock transfer, there is no requirement of e-invoicing. E-invoicing will also cover a reverse charge. Not from a recipient angle, but somebody who is registered, but his services are liable to tax under reverse charge. So he is not going to pay tax, but his recipient will pay tax. Even that person would get covered. So for example, GTA, if the GTA is registered otherwise, but on his invoice, the tax is paid by his customer, then the GTA has to issue a invoice which complies with this requirement. Exports, it applies. Business to government invoices, it applies. In case of e-commerce, again, it applies. In case of e-commerce, the option is given to the e-commerce platform owners to generate e-invoice on behalf of the seller. So that's how the structure is has been designed so far. Okay, this I have discussed, so I'll skip this one. Next slide. Okay, again, I'll just maybe refresh your memory. So as I mentioned that you have certain specified details have to be uploaded. Those details have been specified in form INV01. The notification has already been issued. Now you will, okay, so before I proceed, you will hear a lot of terms like schema. You will hear terms like API. Now please note that schema and API are essentially two sides of the same coin. So schema is nothing but the prescribed format. API is the coded version or the IT version, because if the government says you have to upload the date of invoice, now the date has to be in a particular format, and it has to be an IT format, and that IT format comes from API. So API is a technical version, IT version of the requirement. So schema comes from the law, API comes from the NIC, which is the agency implementing the invoicing, but they basically serve the same purpose. Now you have to upload certain details on the invoice registration portal. This invoice registration portal is managed by NIC, and NIC obviously is an entity appointed by the government to handle the invoicing. Once you upload those details, within a couple of seconds, the government will do a backend verification of those details. And those details that verification is done by the government portal. And the verification is done based on the parameters like supplier GST and invoice type, supplier invoice number, and financial year. So it's a combination of various factors. And if there is no duplication and there are some other checks which have been applied, if everything is okay, you get the invoice reference number from the portal. Plus, you also get the QR code. QR code or quick response code is a pictorial code. You must have seen this code in a lot of bills also these days, right? Or when you go for some purchase or go to a shop, you have this QR code now at all the places, right? Now, QR code shall consist of supplier GSTN, recipient GSTN, invoice number, invoice value, and so including unique IRN. So now the debate is that if I print QR code on my invoice, which I receive from the government portal, whether I still need to print IRN, because QR code already has IRN. So if you see in the slide, the column at the rightmost, the third column, the QR point number 8 is unique IRN. So QR code already has an IRN. Therefore, the debate is whether IRN also has to be printed separately, and I will address that in Q&A session. Now, the important point is that you should understand the process. So you upload the details in that portal in a particular file format called JSON format. The verification happens, and then what you get back from the government is QR code and IRN. Now, what is very important that at this stage, you will get an option to print the PDF copy of the invoice. So even the government portal, the government will roll out the offline sort of softwares you can use to manage the invoicing, and you also have a lot of third-party solutions. Most of these solutions will give you an option to print the invoice the moment you get the inward file from the government portal containing IRN and QR code. So once you print the invoice, print that PDF version. So that tool which you will deploy, it could be government tool, offline tool, or third-party tool. The tool will convert that inward file into a PDF version of the invoice. So one option is you simply print the PDF version of that invoice and use it for your commercial purposes. The other option is that you don't print the PDF version at that stage. You simply extract the IRN and QR code from the inward file received from the government portal. And after you have extracted those two sort of data points, you then sort of copy that to your own invoice. So basically, then you have to transfer that file from the portal to your ERP. Okay, and then you can print IRN and QR code in your own invoice, which is your normal invoice. Now, why somebody would choose normal invoice versus the invoice which comes from the government portal? Again, there is no straightforward answer. One of the reasons could be that your invoice will have basic details, plus you will have a lot of terms and conditions which are printed on the back of the invoice. Now, when I say you will upload certain details in the portal, you can't upload those terms and conditions. And therefore, if you want terms and conditions to be part of the invoice, then all the option you have is you only take the QR code and IRN from the inward file of the government, receipt from the government, and then put that in your normal ERP, so that ERP can use that IRN and QR code and print the invoice using that code. But then that will take care of requirement. The only issue is that you'll end up having two separate documents. So one is your own invoice with QR code and iron on printed on it. Other is the invoice that you might receive from the government portal. So again, we'll discuss that subsequently, but this issue is very important. What exactly you want to use going forward? Because the copy of that invert file that you receive containing QR code and iron is also sent to your customer by the government portal, or will be sent to the customer by the government portal at some future point of time. So we have to be very careful which invoice version we are using, because ultimately it may result in confusion if not managed properly. But the essence is that you'll upload certain details on the portal. The portal will do a backend verification. Once the verification happens, they will send back to you QR code and iron. The iron and the QR code has to be printed on the invoice, and then the invoice can be sent to the customer. At the same time, government portal will use the same detail to sort of generate email for you, and they will also use the same detail to prepare returns for you. And the future plan is that they will also send the copy of that file to your customer also. So if the customer does some backend integration, there is a chance that based on that invert file received from the government, he may actually auto create his purchase register. So that's how it is. It has been designed. Okay. Next slide, Sumit. Okay, now this again is, so don't go by numbers, but basically when I mentioned that you have to upload specified details in the government portal, they have prescribed some 130 plus fields. Okay, out of those 130 fields for every invoice, there are some mandatory fields, there are some optional fields. Now for mandatory fields, there is no discussion. So you have to upload those details for a particular invoice in the portal. But as far as optional fields are concerned, again, your role becomes important as chartered accountants, because for example, optional fields have names like bank account number, or contact details of the company's personnel. Now there are companies who have come back to us saying that we don't want to upload bank account details on the portal because for various reasons I don't want to give my bank account details to the government authority every time. Then there are people who are saying that I don't want to give my contact details to the government every time. So in case they have a they want to do an audit, they can come back to us separately, but I don't want to give this kind of information to the government on every invoice. So plus in a lot of cases, the current ERP or the current accounting system may not have all the details which are captured today. So given all these requirements, for mandatory fields, obviously you don't have any option. You have to report those fields. But for optional fields, you have to go field by field and then discuss with your client what exactly has to be reported. Based on the discussion, then you have to communicate to the IT team of the client that this field we want to report. So that kind of exercise has to be done before you start the implementation. So that's broadly on the fields. Again, there are specific formats. So date, month has to be DDMM and all that. Invoice is INV, credit notice, CR and all that. So again, the requirement is in terms of what is to be uploaded and in what format it has to be uploaded. So everything has to be very precise. Any gaps in this may result in errors, and you will then get an error report from the system. So you have to be very careful before you upload these details in the portal. Now again, the issue is if you have 1 or 2 transactions a month, you can go to the government portal manually and upload one by one. But if you have multiple transactions in a month, you have say 100 transaction invoices in a day, then doing that manually becomes a challenge. And there obviously government and other third-party service providers will come up with a tool which will help you to upload those details just like you do GST one today. In case transactions are running into thousands per day, then you need to have a real-time integration between your ERP, between client's ERP and the government portal. Sumit, next slide. Okay, what are the benefits of invoicing? So again, see what will happen, that you will upload those details in a specified format, and everybody has to follow the same pattern. So there is consistency, so the same data can be used for e-way bill, the same data can be used for return. So, the data can be used, that is interoperability. Reconciliation, again, today what happens that normally the GST compliance process is handled by a finance team. The supply chain or the e-way bill is handled by the supply chain team, because e-way bill is for movement of goods. And every month then there is a reconciliation which is happening. We have seen a lot of companies getting notices because the data as per the e-way bill portal is not tallying with the data as per GST portal. So again, if the source data remain the same, and government itself use the data to generate e-way bill as well as prepare GSTR1 for the companies, then that requirement of reconciliation will not be there anymore. Faster availability of ITC, again, the same issue that you will have to, today what happens, at times I claim the credit, but I do find vendor has not uploaded the invoice, in the portal and all that. So if everything is getting linked, then those issues should not be there. And obviously, everything is now from authority standpoint, the system will have all the information, and which will help them to do an audit in a more efficient manner. Next. Sumit. Okay, okay, now this is again very interesting. Now this is, so if you see the slide, right, it says API version 1.03. So, so a lot of changes have happened, okay, and so as I mentioned, there is a schema. The schema comes from the notification, and there is API. API comes from the NIC or GSTN. So NIC is the IT vendor. Now, based on the schema, they release APIs. Ideally, what is there in the schema and what is there in the API, which is a coded version, should remain the same. But you will find instances where API is not exactly matching with schema, and that is many times the reason is that from an IT standpoint, they sort of they don't introduce everything at one go, so they will have one. For example, I will give you example of this this credit or debit note linkage with invoice, right? That requirement was there in the law for since the beginning. Then some time back, they changed the law to say that you don't have to link your credit note debit note with the original invoice. But the portal was not changed. It was only after a couple of weeks that the portal was also changed, and now you don't have to link your credit note debit note with the original invoice number. Now the same thing also happens with API. So you will have some schema. The schema is basically what government wants, but API may not keep up the pace with schema. So you will find certain areas where API is not exactly matching with schema, but it's a matter of time. Eventually API would be upgraded to take care of the schema at the end of the day. Now API, this is version 3. They've already released first 2 versions, and based on the feedback received from the industry, based on the schema, they keep on making changes in API. Now API, if you see, okay, now before you upload the e-invoice, there are as I mentioned, there are requirements in terms of what to upload, and there also validation happens. So if you upload an invoice which is for interstate supply, but you apply CGST and SGST, which is an intrastate supply tax, the government portal will throw up an error, and therefore you will not be able to generate e-invoice. So like this, there are a lot of other validations which are inbuilt in this portal, in this structure. But again, I want to caution you that these are basic validations. Don't think that if everything goes through and you get the invoice reference number from the portal, everything is okay. You still have to do a lot of other validations which you do even today. But just to give you a perspective or an idea about what are the key validations or recent amendments in the API, so they are going to verify whether the supply is interstate or intrastate based on the supplier state and the place of supply. In case of credit or debit note, they will not now link it with original invoice. So earlier, in the earlier version of API, the credit note had to be mapped to the original invoice number. Otherwise it would have shown an error. Now, as per the revised requirement, that validation will not happen. New field has been introduced to cover for situation where there is IGST on intra-state transactions. This is primarily for supplies to SEZ, because even if SEZ is in the same state, you don't apply local tax, you still apply IGST. Now, under the earlier version, they were saying it will show you an error because it's a local supply, but now they have changed the API, and that kind of transaction you can put IGST. In case of bill to ship to transaction, if you recall, the place of supply is linked to bill to location and not to ship to location. So if you're billing to Andhra and shipping to Karnataka, in terms of supply of goods, the bill to location Andhra is a place of supply as far as vendor is concerned. So they have addressed this issue, and now in case of a bill to ship to transaction, they will validate the place of supply based on bill to code and not based on ship to state code. They have provided field for discount and other charges. There are some issues in this we'll discuss maybe subsequently. And there is also a field for amount of export duty. Now, see, again, you have to be very clear that this is not an exhaustive list of validation. If you apply a wrong tax rate, okay, you'll still get the iron. Okay, so I mean, those kind of checks you still have to apply before you upload something on the portal. Okay, I'll just come back to this topic in a while. Next slide. Okay, key aspects. This I'll come later. Sumit, let's carry on. Okay. So as I mentioned, e-invoicing is applicable for invoice, credit note, and debit note. Iron QR code has to be printed on the invoice. Again, the debate is if I print QR code, whether I still need to print iron. We will have a clear answer hopefully very soon. Okay. Recently, what they have done is that they have introduced a functionality in the portal where you can log in, and if you sort of give certain details about the company, you will come to know whether that company is liable to get themselves registered under e-invoicing or with e-invoicing portal or not. Now, this is particularly important for you for your client. They can go to the portal and check whether they are liable for to be registered under this regime, and even for your vendors. Okay, if you have a vendor, you can always go to the portal and figure out whether he is liable to be registered or not. The reason why you have to go to the portal and check for your vendors also is that tomorrow, if your vendor issues an invoice to you which is not an e-invoice, and he is otherwise liable to get himself registered for e-invoice, then that invoice that you receive from the vendor is not a valid invoice, which consequently means that if you claim credit of GST charge on that invoice, you are likely to face disputes from the tax authorities. It is very important that you sort of ensure that vendor sends you an invoice which is in compliance with e-invoicing norms, especially if the vendor is having a turnover of more than 500 crores. Now, for B2B, so if for reverse charge, so if you are availing some services on which you are supposed to pay tax on a reverse charge, currently you are supposed to raise a self invoice. Now so you don't have to have an iron for self invoice. So in case of reverse charge, the person who is providing service has to get himself registered with the portal. But as far as recipient is concerned, there is no requirement for reporting those transactions under the e-invoicing portal. That is one. Also for B2C, business to consumer, where you are billing to a non-registered person, there is no requirement of iron. Okay, so you don't have to get an invoice reference number for B2C supplies. So all the retail sector, right, where the customers are not registered, there is no requirement of e-invoicing, but then there is a requirement of QR code. Now there is a big question mark whether QR code would apply to these set of people from 1st October, and we will address that again in the Q&A. But we will see how, because at least till yesterday there was no clarity, and the government has issued a clarification I think yesterday evening. Okay, now on the cancellation, which is very important, and So the way it will work is that you will upload certain details about an invoice in the GST portal, and then the same details will be used to generate iron and e-way bill and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to cancel the iron, okay, and it could be because you want to cancel the invoice was raised wrongly, or by mistake you uploaded the wrong details about that particular invoice, okay, then you can't amend the iron, you have to cancel the iron. And if you cancel the iron, you have to cancel the iron within 24 hours of uh, generating the iron. If you realize that say there's something wrong has happened after 24 hours, then you can't cancel the iron. The only option is for you is to cancel the invoice and issue a credit note and all that. So now the way it will work is that if you today raise an invoice, why the process is very important. If you raise an invoice today and you upload certain details about the invoice in the portal for getting the iron QR code, and while the invoice is perfectly okay, there is some error in the details which you have reported. If the error is in the format, for example, date is not in the prescribed format, you will not get the iron any which ways, you'll get an error report from the government portal. But if there is no error in the format, but the say date is wrong, or the quantity is wrong, so you will get the iron. But then that's an iron which you have got based on the wrong information which is being fed in the system. So you will have to cancel the iron. Okay. The moment you cancel the iron, you will also have to cancel the invoice. The reason is that you can't have two irons against one invoice. So even if the invoice is correct, because there was some error in uploading the details in the portal when you wanted to get iron, you will have no option but to cancel the invoice also, which again is a task in itself. And therefore you have to be very careful what you upload, because any post upload adjustment becomes extremely complicated. Okay, so again, I think we'll discuss this more in the some subsequent slides, but the process which you follow for uploading the details is very important. Now, tomorrow, if you want to cancel iron and you have also used the same detail to generate e-way bill, if you see the latest guidelines, they say that you have to first cancel the e-way bill and then you have to cancel the iron. So look at the steps that you have to take to sort of correct if something has gone wrong, right? So a perfectly valid invoice may have to be cancelled. You may have to issue a credit note depending on the business scenario to sort of if something goes wrong at the time of iron upload stage. Okay, this I discussed. So you can't generate e-invoicing. Okay, so you can't have for the same invoice two irons. So once you cancel the iron, then the underlying invoice against which that iron was sought to be obtained is also nullified. So you have to issue a fresh invoice. Only allowed tax rates can be entered. So as I mentioned that if you enter 5, 12, 18, 28, it will go through. If you enter 6 and all that, it will show you an error. But if you instead enter 12 instead of 5, that will go through, but that's a wrong sort of reporting. And therefore, e-invoicing will not take care of that validation. It is your responsibility to check these kind of issues. Again, tax amount validation will happen at the item level as well as the total level. For exports, they are saying that you use the URP and the state code has to be 96. For SEZ, they are saying that the state code should be the state in which the unit is located. For HSN code, again, they are saying that you have to use the HSN code which are valid as per the GST master. Now, again, it is only to check whether the HSN code that you have mentioned is or uploaded is valid or not, whether it exists or not. If you enter a wrong HSN code, that will not be checked. So it will go through, you'll get the iron. And tomorrow, if you realize that the iron was based on wrong HSN code, then again, you have to repeat the entire cycle. In case of export of goods, obviously, you have to mention the ship to address because, mentioning customer address may not serve the purpose. Okay, now this is a sort of recent development, if I may use that term. You have the option of generating invoice reference number and e-way bill together. So the moment you upload details, the system will generate IRN and it will also generate e-way bill. The sequence is IRN first and e-way bill, but it happens within a gap of seconds, so it doesn't really matter. If you have already uploaded certain details at the time of IRN generation, and you can obviously subsequently update those details with the vehicle details, and then you can generate e-way bill. So you can use the same platform, which is invoice registration portal, to generate e-way bill also, either at the time when you upload the initial details, if you have all the details with you, including vehicle details, or you can upload transporter ID at the beginning, and then as and when you get more details regarding vehicle and all that, you can enter that also. But you can use the same platform. But if there are scenarios where that attracts only e-way bill and not e-invoicing, for example, DC, right? It's an intrastate stock transfer. That's only a DC scenario. That's not a e-invoice scenario. For those transactions, you can't use this e-invoicing portal. You have to go to directly e-way bill portal. So again, when you do this mapping during invoicing implementation, you have to first, you have to divide your transaction into 3 buckets. Bucket 1, transactions that attract both e-way bill and e-invoicing. Then there are transactions that attract only e-invoicing, and there are transactions that attract only e-way bill. And all these transactions would have to be handled differently from a process standpoint also. So again, very important. Again, if you go for cancellation, as I mentioned, that you have to first cancel e-way bill and then IRN. If the e-way bill is not cancelled, your IRN will not be cancelled. And you can always regenerate the e-way bill number also. So this is on e-way bill and e-invoicing linkage. Sumit, next slide. Okay, so Sumit, you want to take this up?
Yeah, I'll take this up.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Sumit here, and I will discuss the recent clarification. So most of the legal text and other requirements around e-invoicing has already been discussed by Abhinav. So one by one, I'll take up the recent clarification which has been given by GST and NIC at various sessions and various instances. Okay, so the first one is that voluntary invoice. So everybody would be thinking whether can I opt for e-invoice in case my turnover is less than 500 CR. So government has clarified that no, as of now, only companies whose turnover is more than 500 crores only can go for the live environment. However, you can test for your less than 500 crores companies, but voluntary, as of now, they are only allowing companies whose turnover is more than 500 crores. Second, from a vendor management, so as Abhinav mentioned earlier, they have developed a vendor link or a facility wherein one can just insert the GST number, and one can just insert the GST number, and they can get the applicability of their invoicing. So this will help to understand whether we are liable to invoicing or not. So that's one of the way to understand or to check whether we are liable to invoicing. Then the next one is exceptions. So for example, your internet is not working, also for any other reason you are not able to generate e-invoice. So in such cases, government has communicated through GST in that we will issue certain guidelines in this regard in the coming next week. Next is TCS under income tax. So in one of the sessions, the government sessions, wherein they have said that there is a field called other charges. It's a other charges field in the schema. In that case, wherein you can use that other charges field to mention TCS under income tax. However, government has to formally clarify from their end. This has been proposed by GST network in one of the sessions. Next is one of the very prevalent query is that whether ISD invoices is to be included for e-invoice. So as of now, they have said that no, because it is not a tax invoice, it is a distribution invoice. So they have kept ISD invoices out of the purview of e-invoices. Now, next is non-GST supplies. So for instance, you are working for a hotel wherein there are two supplies under a single invoice. One is a taxable invoice supply called room service or restaurant, and in the same invoice you want to show sale of alcohol. Now the sale of alcohol is out of the purview of GST. So how would you show this in the invoice? So government is of the view that as of now you issue a separate invoice for the purpose of alcohol. So alcohol is out of the purview of GST. Now, so for the purpose of e-invoicing, you raise a separate invoice for the room rent or the restaurant and a separate general invoice or a tax invoice for the alcohol. That's the way they have as of now clarified. Now the rounding off, they are saying that the rounding off will be at the invoice level, not at the line level. So you calculate all your taxable value, assessable value, tax amount, line item wise. And once that is done, you can do the rounding off at the bottom of the invoice. So that's one. Next is tenure. This is a very important question that, okay, I have generated the e-invoice, but for what period of time I have to keep it in my system? What is the tenure of the repository? So now government has clarified that, it's not a clarification, but it's again coming out from the section 36 that you have to maintain up to 72 months from the date of generation. Again, so your IT systems and everything should be equipped enough to handle that, because government currently NIC is of the view that we will not hold your data for more than 24 or 72 hours. Currently, I'm not exactly sure what is the hours, but it will not be more than 1 or 2 days. So again, we have to maintain a repository at our end so that in the future assessments and everything, we have to check that. Now, again, one more very important question, because GST has come into play to understand, to curb the tax evasion and to make the ITC seamless. So whether this IRN, which is generated by the supplier, will it be reflected to the recipient in his GSTR 2A? So now government is under the discussion stage whether to include that IRN number in GSTR 2A. That's the one. Now, that is from a GSTR 2A. Next is transition. For example, you have made supply in the pre-e-invoicing regime, but your invoice is raised in the post-e-invoicing regime. So how would you comply with the e-invoicing? So government has clarified that the reporting is based on the date of invoice. So if the date of invoice is on or after 1st of October, you are liable to e-invoicing for that particular invoice. Next is credential. Again, shall I generate a new credential for invoice, or the existing e-wayable credentials will help? So government has clarified that the existing e-wayable credential will sail you through for the purpose of e-invoice as well. Now, again, a very important question. What is that? Whether I should carry that hard copy document while the goods are being transported. So what government has clarified it, because if you see the rule number 48.5, where 48.5.6.7, they have mentioned that the printing of invoice provision shall be excluded in cases where the e-invoicing is applicable. So wherever e-invoicing is applicable, the owner of the conveyance who is carrying that conveyance, he may, I'm again repeating, he may carry that e-invoicing number in his mobile, and whenever there is an inspection, he can show that e-invoicing number and e-waybill number through his electronic device, and that will be sufficient for the purpose of e-waybill compliance or e-invoicing compliance. However, ground reality may differ, so it is initially advisable that you carry a printout, and then when the things settle down, we may shift to a total automation in this regard. Now, chronology in respect to e-way bill. So see, when the e-invoice, so when the generation is being done, the first stage is e-invoice, then e-way bill. Technically, it happens simultaneously through a single e-way bill, the single call, API call. When there is a cancellation, there is a reverse chronology that you have to cancel e-way bill first, then you have to cancel the e-invoicing, because once the e-way bill is generated, the goods are moving. Technically, you cannot cancel your e-invoicing. And one more interesting aspect towards this is that once the vehicle is inspected, that is on the during the moment a vehicle is inspected, then technically they will put some controls that you cannot cancel that IRN and e-way bill. We have to see in the subsequent months or the years how that will be implemented. Now, there is again, just to repeat, there is a field called other charges. This other charges, if you see the schema, the detailed schema which is released by government, this other charges is kept as a non-taxable. That is, wherever it is not liable to GST. If I can just keep it in a loose term, for example, it's a pure reimbursement or a TCS under income tax. Such items can be kept under other charges. However, greater clarity is required from the government in this regard. But what NIC or the GST network is of the view that this item is not part of taxable value. So, for example, you in your invoice you have 3 line items. Now, for the 3 line item supply of goods, you have freight charges. On the freight, you will definitely charge GST if in case. So if that GST is to be charged, you have to create a line item separately in the invoice and in the e-invoice so that GST can be charged. So that is the way things should move in respect to other charges. Now, what would be the key challenges when we discuss about e-invoicing? Now, when we say real time, so see, before we discuss this, recently, a couple of days back, there was a provision earlier that you have to generate e-invoicing within 24 hours. Now that restriction is removed, there is no time limit as such to generate e-invoicing. So you can generate e-invoicing later, but the question comes that in case of supply of goods, you have to generate e-invoicing before movement. Otherwise, the goods may be detained or the certain penalties and provisions may attract. That's the reason we are insisting that real time would be preferable where there is a huge volume, because that will avoid your data issues and other post sale issues while inspection, while movement of goods. Now, there is no option to cancel there is no option to do amendment in the e-invoice. So this brings a question that can I cancel? Yes, you can cancel within 24 hours. You can cancel the e-invoice. But if you have misrepresented any of an item of the e-invoice, then there is no option to amend the e-invoice. The only option with you is, first is, if it is within 24 hours, you cancel it. If you have come to know about that mistake post 24 hours, then you have to raise a credit note through invoice and then nullify that transaction. That's the only way you can manage that. Okay. Now, next is so again, a question comes that will my outward supply details in the returns will be auto-populated? Government is of the view, yes, it will be automated, but what happens to B2C transactions which are not covered under e-invoice? So technically I have to sit and do the reconciliation of the data appearing on the portal, GSTR 1 portal, and then add B2C supplies to it. So this may bring a little bit confusion. However, government is working in a way to bring 100% data, but let's see how it comes out. Now, IRN, so for example, you are using a manual method to generate an invoice. So what invoice you generated through your ERP, that is perfectly correct. There is no issue. But when you punch the data on the e-invoicing portal, you did some mistake. Okay. Now there is no other option. You have to cancel the e-invoice. But the underlying invoice which for which you have cancelled the e-invoice, that invoice is correct, the underlying invoice is correct, but for a same invoice number you cannot generate IRN again. This is a limitation or a validation. So you have to even cancel the original invoice which was generated. So this brings a question that how do we transmit the data to the government so that there is minimal data entry issues, because for every data entry issue you have to cancel the invoice, then again subsequently cancel the base invoice as well. So this is the key challenges around e-invoicing. What will be the impact? Okay, before going to this, I would just cover one slide which we just missed. Everybody would be curious that how do I generate e-invoice? What are the modes to generate e-invoice? Okay, I will start with the second option first, because that's the most common option, and I think currently it is not applicable to SME, but when it comes to SME, the small players, the offline tool will be very useful. Government has already given an offline tool on the government portal. So this is under the second option, just to reiterate. So under the offline tool method, you will get an offline tool. Currently the same thing you are using for GSTR 1, you will get an offline tool. You upload the data in that tool and then you give it to the government portal as the same. So the government portal is the IRP portal, invoice registration portal. Once you give it to the IRP portal will process it, verify it, and give you back the response, the QR code. And there is a facility at the IRP portal to take a print as well, based as a standard layout. So that is the first option, which is the most common option. But if you have high volume of transactions, then this option may be difficult for you to comply with, because this option may have a lot of manual and data entry errors. So to avoid this or to combat this, what government has proposed is that you take my APIs. Okay, what government has done is through his portal, they have given the access of API. API is nothing but a wire. Government is saying that okay, I am giving you a wire access. You catch that wire and you do a real-time handshake. But for that, you have to make your IT system robust, ERP robust, and if there are a lot of prerequisite around it. So directly integrating through API with the government, to avoid that, government has given the option that you can do it through the GSP. What are GSP? So there is a concept called, I will just put it in a very loose term, in a layman term, that there is a concept called packer and mover. Okay, one is the person who packs the data. Okay, so at your house, whenever you're shifting, there comes one packer who will pack your data, and one will be the transporter who will move the data. The same way, there is an offline tool, that is ASP, and one is a GSP. So the ASP tool, you will have many ASP tools in the market. Okay, they will pack the data as per the government format. Okay, then that will be transported to the government through licensed GSP. So there are many again GSPs in the market who can transport that. So one is the packer, that is the ASP. The other is the GSP, who is the pipe. Okay, so this is a packer and mover concept. So government is telling that okay, if you cannot directly integrate with me due to some technical constraint, you can opt from GSP. GSPs are the large players who are given the public access, that okay, you collect all the companies and send data through your system. So there are certain validations and everything, and you can get technical support in between, because directly communicating with the government will be little difficult. So through GSPs you can do it little bit seamless. So these are the major three modes of creation of e-invoicing. So that's where I wanted to just cover that point once. Okay, so this is very important question. Everybody will have this question, that what if I don't comply with the e-invoicing provision? Okay, I would just make a headline statement here that government is very clear. In Rule 48, they have brought a sub rule. Okay, sorry, they have brought a sub rule saying that any invoice or any provision of e-invoicing which is applicable to an entity, and if they are not complying to that e-invoicing, any invoicing generated without e-invoicing will be an invalid invoice. It will not be a valid invoice. So this brings a question that what are the that complications which comes if an invoice is not a valid invoice. So basically, see, for example, remove e-invoicing as of now. Assume that you don't generate a normal invoice today. Definitely government will say that you are doing a tax evasion, you are not complying with the law. They will impose you general penalty, specific penalty. While transporting the goods without the invoice, they may detain your goods, they may confiscate your goods. So these are, so where we are heading to is technically that if it's not a valid invoice, technically you have not issued an invoice itself. That's where the story begins. So the provisions to comply with e-invoicing are as critical as if we are generating a normal invoice today. So we have to be very careful in this regard. So basically, what are the penalties towards it? That is that, see, there is a general penalty under section 122, wherein they can impose a penalty of 10,000. Now this 10,000 will be per invoice, per month, per year. Again, there is no clarity. Maybe government will clarify, or when it happens practically, we will get to know. So that is one. Now there is a general penalty of 25,000 if business fails to issue invoices as per the provisions or rules. So again, our invoicing is covered under Rule 48. So technically, this general penalty can be imposed again per invoice, per month, per year is a question mark. Okay. Now, if the goods are moving without an invoice, section 129 may be attracted and your goods may be detained. Again, this is a subjective matter on ground, how it happens. These are the major three implications which we can think of as of now. However, there is no specific penalty in respect to e-invoice. Specific e-invoicing, there is no penalty. So again, we are taking a view that all the penalties applicable to a normal invoice are verbatim applicable to an e-invoicing. Now we have to see in the subsequent months of implementation how they take this up. Okay. Now above three are legal complications or the implications. The fourth one is that, for example, okay, you have transported the goods without e-invoice and everything, but when the recipient, the vendor, the customer receives the goods, okay, he will always have an issue that you don't have an e-invoicing. Okay, so they may hold your payment. There can be contractual issues in regard to that, and they may hold your payment, and this may lead to unavoidable disputes. So why to create a dispute when a small e-invoicing can solve the whole purpose? Okay, so this is again an impact of non-generation of invoice. Again, which is a very important aspect of GST overall, that whether ITC can be seamless. So will ITC, so there are three questions around this. Will ITC admissibility be questioned of inward does not if the invoice doesn't contain the IRN? IRN is a 64-digit string which will be issued by the IRP. So if an invoice is not having the QR code, that QR code consists of IRN. So what will be the implication in regard to the inward invoice? So whether the ITC will be questioned. Overall, if we see the reading of law from section 16 subsection 2, they may question your ITC. However, the time that in the coming months, we may get to know how the government issues clarification in this regard. Because if you see currently only 500 crores above companies are only liable for e-invoicing. What happens to below 500? So again, I have to maintain two separate records, a reconciliation, and these issues will crop up. So this question we have to address. Now, second question is how to determine whether an vendor is liable to invoicing. So as discussed earlier, government has given a functionality that through punching of GSTN, you can determine whether that GSTN is liable to invoicing. on a other front, from your side, from a, from a recipient side, you can send a vendor management mail or a, intimation to all your vendors that uh, your business partner, please understand there is a e-invoicing applicability from 1st October. Kindly be prepared for it. In case there is no IRN, there can be consequences around it. So accordingly, you can manage a mail or a intimation to your vendors, and this can be managed from two ends. One is from the government portal end, and other is from the mail, your customer vendor management mails. Next is how to capture a 64-digit IRN. This is a very big question because many of the ERPs may not handle a 64-digit string in their ERP. So how do we manage this storage of a 64-digit string? And again, a 64-digit string, to type it manually or to note it manually is really difficult, or I would say very difficult to keep it error free. So these three questions are very relevant in respect to your ITC reconciliation overall.
Yeah.
Abhinav, you want to take this up?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So, we have now in the past, I think 60+ minutes discuss e-invoicing requirements and all that. But as I mentioned in the beginning, that e-invoicing implementation is not a plug and play sort of exercise, right? So now, if you sort of try to connect the dots, you will realize that there are a lot of steps involved before you can say that implementation is complete. Now, the first thing is that you have to ascertain whether the current ERP of the company is compatible in terms of data requirements, right? So if the schema, which has some 100 odd fields, which is a combination of mandatory and optional fields, how much data you already have in the ERP. So in many cases, we have seen for exporters, for example, the users don't upload the port details when they raise invoice. So you have to upload those details in the e-invoicing portal. So if the data is not there in the source file, how will you then generate the IRN? Because that is a requirement for you to report to get the IRN number. So you have to figure out whether your ERP has all the data, plus whether the ERP is compatible. So in a lot of cases, we have companies who want to integrate or link their ERP with the government portal directly. But for that to happen, ERP version and all that has to be compliant, because they should be, the version should be good enough to be integrated with the government portal. So that kind of readiness assessment is required. Again, the next issue is, how do you want to integrate? So if you have less transactions in a month, you have one transaction in a month, or say not more than 50, 20, 50, 70, you can do a manual or a batch upload the way you do currently for your returns, right? So if you have 100 invoices in a month, you can use the offline tool, offline format, put all the details about the invoices raised or to be raised, and then you get the IRN number for all the invoices at one go. But if you have large number of invoices, then doing this manual exercise upload would be next to impossible, because there are 100 columns. You have to ensure that the information is in the right format, it is accurate. So somebody has to first populate, then somebody has to check. So all those factors come into picture, right? And if something goes wrong, you get an error report, and then you try to figure out what is the error. The same thing which happens today for your GST R1. So if the volume is large, I think integration would be required. If the volume is less, then you have multiple options. But even in that case, the accuracy of data becomes extremely important, because unlike return, which is only a reporting requirement, this will have an impact on your movement of goods also, because a wrong IRN could result in avoidable complications, as we discussed in the last slide. The third thing which you have to do is, you have to compare your current invoice format or debit note, credit note format with what has been prescribed. So today, if your invoice has 50 fields and the requirement is to upload 60 details, you have to ensure that the remaining 10 details are also picked up from the system, right? That's a gap assessment. In a lot of cases, you will have the data, but it is not in the desired format. So again, you need to change your ERP, you need to change your report so that you get that data in that format. Now, in case of optional fields, I briefly touched upon that for bank account details, for contact details, or even from a MIS reporting standpoint, you will have to take a call field by field, what you want to report, what you don't want to report on every invoice. So again, that's something which you have to discuss and deliberate with your clients before you go live. Okay, now the next one is month-end transactions, post-sale adjustments. So as I mentioned that, invoice cancellation is not easy. In fact, you can't cancel the iron after 24 hours, and any amendment is not allowed. So you have to in the portals and all that. So a lot of things which today might happen may not be possible or feasible under the e-invoicing regime. So all these typical post-sale adjustments which happen, you have to be very clear, agree with, plot all those transactions, and then agree on a protocol, because otherwise you will end up getting needless errors, or you will have different reports which you have to then reconcile. So that's important. And the last issue, again, which I discussed, that one option is that you use the tool which is given to you by the government or by the third-party service providers and generate invoice from the tool itself, which comes back to you from the government because the file has that QR code and IRN. Other option is you don't use that file which comes to you from the government. You simply extract the QR code and IRN from that file and put that on your own invoice, right? Now that is easier said than done unless you have a backend integration, because once the file comes back to you from the government portal, which will have IRN and QR code, you need to have a process through which that QR code is printed on your own invoice. Now, if you don't have that integration between your ERP and that tool, then you might have to, I'm just giving you a very raw example. You might have to use a pen drive to sort of copy that QR code, and then use a pen drive to copy the data in your ERP, then print the invoice, which is a tedious task. Therefore, you have to take a call. How do you want to? And this is the last mile connectivity, which is very crucial. How do you want to integrate? How do you ensure that the QR code and the IRN that you receive from the government is actually printed on your invoice? If you use a government tool, then there is no issue, but a government tool invoice will only have those basic details. It will not have all the details that you might require. So your typical invoice will have basic details plus terms and conditions at the back of the invoice. So the file that you receive from government will only have basic details. It will not have those terms and conditions. So that integration is extremely critical, especially if the volume of transaction is high. Otherwise, obviously, you can, otherwise it's manageable. So all this will take time. And only after you have mapped all these transactions, all these scenarios, then you can ask the IT team to start implementation. And once implementation happens, again, you have to do a UAT or user testing, right? So all these activities will take time, and therefore, either if you are part of a corporate or you have clients who you think would get covered, please do sensitize them that it will require some time. It's not something which can be done within a span of a week. So that's how it is on the preparatory steps that you have to take. Yeah, so I think that's the last slide. Sumit, any slide other we have, or we covered all the issues?
Yeah, we have covered. So we can take it to the host once for discussing the questions now, one by one. I think discussing questions will take a lot of time now.
Yeah, so back to sir. You can.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you, Abhinav. In fact, look, this is such an important topic that amongst us, I saw as a participant CA Satish Raf, who is also into grievance cell of the Telangana State GST Council from Telangana. So I just requested Satish Sraf also to join us. Okay, so rather than me talking, Satish Sraf can just give his comments. Only thing is, Sumit, before Satish, Satish has joined, how easy it would be to implement this, and what problems we are going to see. Frankly, I think Satish should be a better person to talk. Satish bhai, welcome to this e-invoicing program. Because you are a GST man, I thought why not have you here? Yeah, over to you. And
Very good.
if you can just doing the stop sharing, then we can just go to questions after.
Okay, sure, sir. Yeah.
Very warm good evening to my brothers and sisters. At the outset, I thank the Hyderabad branch and managing committee for giving this opportunity and recognizing me that I know a little bit of GST and they have welcome to this program. And looking at the e-invoicing provisions, what Abhinav Srivastava and Sumit Sethia were saying for the past maybe 1.5 hours, I have been listening to them. I appreciate both of them. The Jugalbandi went on very well, and they both of them have presented the paper very well, and they have brought out all the intricacies and the nuance of the provisions relating to the invoicing, and I shall appreciate both of them for their efforts and educating the members of our branch. Thank you, Abhinav and Sumit Sethia.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. And coming to the reality of this e-invoicing, because now we are in the phase of pandemic and due to COVID-19, whether the business will be able to take up this assignment, I could say massive assignment of e-invoicing where the turnover is more than 500 crores. And as the Sumit Sethia was saying that the 64 string has to be recorded in the final books of account, then whether practically we'll be able to do that or not is a big question. And we say, where you are saying that it is mandatory for above 500 crores fortune companies. So we can say that those companies can well afford all these facilities and they can do it, but may not be in a overnight. It is not possible because they have to redesign and revamp their entire systems, and then they have to implement the e-invoicing. It is going to be a big task for them. And moreover, whether the government will be able to implement from 1st October, because what happened on 1st July 2017, we have seen, and how it went havoc, and maybe during the last 3 years, there were more than 100 occasions the government has extended the due dates. And even this e-invoice was made mandatory 1 year back. It has been postponing since then, and now the final day, maybe the 1st October, they are saying that, but I have my own reservations, and because my system is not permitting that the government will be able to implement from the 1st October, maybe 1st April, or maybe from 1st January, they can do it, because in this short span of time, the entities or maybe the government will not be able to do this. This is from my side. But coming to the presentation, I appreciate both the speakers for bringing out the intricacies and the nuance of the provisions, and I appreciate both of them from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Satish bhai. What I'll do, Sumit and Abhinav, is that I will read out the questions, and you can also just click and see the question. So even if it has been answered, just for the sake of again reaffirmation, we can just answer it in a one line if you already covered it. So I'm starting with a question from Prem Kumar Yeda. For the purpose of e-invoicing, whether aggregate turnover of rupees 500 crore is a turnover of current financial year 2021 or of the financial year 1920?
May I, Abhinav?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So overall, there was a narrative earlier that the turnover will be based on the previous financial year. Okay. Recently, there is a clarification, or I would say initiative by the NIC, that in any of the 3 previous financial years, since when the GST is implemented, okay, in any financial year, if your turnover is exceeding 500 crores, okay, you can make an application to NIC and they will allow you to generate e-invoicing. But for that, you have to go from your side and apply at NIC portal. You won't get yourself. So there is a change there in the approach.
Yeah, but again, supplementary question for this 17-18, because in the topic you are saying it's only the GST turnover which will be considered. So for 17-18, it would be July to March, or again the full year per annum turnover?
See, this is clarified by NIC. Now, NIC is not a government as such. They are only the technical part of that implementation. So we have to wait again from the government side that whether what is to be included and what is not to be included. But they have stressed on the word GST period. So we can reasonably assume as of now that it should be from July 17 only. Abhinav,
you're on mute.
Yeah. So that's also a irony, because see, a lot of clarifications, a lot of literature which is there on e-invoicing right now in the public domain is not from the government. It's not through notification. It's through FAQs. I mean, you keep on hearing from GST officials and all that. So somebody can always tomorrow go and challenge that. Where is authority? Because ultimately, if you want to enforce this provision, it has to find support from any section, rule, and I mean, today even rules are getting challenged, so that's a different issue. But there has to be some legislative, supporting sort of rule or section behind everything. So a lot of literature which is coming, into the public domain is released by NIC, GSTN, and therefore there is a big question mark, and therefore we are hoping that government will very soon come up with a detailed set of clarifications. Otherwise, this confusion will always be there, and we will have could have non-compliance, right? Which is avoidable. Yeah, back to Sumit and the questions. Yeah, sorry.
I'll just take the next question. It's from Venkatramna. Is it compulsory that the date of invoice issued in the ERP/accounting software to be uploaded on the same day?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier that there was a provision earlier, a couple of days back, that within I'm not exactly able to recollect. It was 24 or 72 hours from the date of invoice you have to generate e-invoicing. Now that validation is removed. There was a lot of pressure from taxpayers that please remove this because it is very difficult to manage within a short time, and so currently NIC has removed that validation. So there is no I would say there is no technical constraint towards it. However, again, legal aspect government has to clarify.
So just to add to what Sumit mentioned, that the background was that in a lot of cases, say month-end transactions, the invoice is dated 31st of March, but you will actually raise the invoice on 5th of April because books closures takes time, right? The same thing also applies to TP adjustments, which happen after audit is done. So you pass a JV or entry only after audit is over, which is July, August, September, right? Now for those cases, the law means the FAQs released by the NIC, not the legal literature. They mentioned that invoice date can't be a date which is it has to be so if you want to raise iron for an invoice, it has to be on the date of invoice or tomorrow. It can't be beyond that. Now for those month-end transactions, if you raise an invoice on 31st of March or raise an invoice dated 31st of March, but it is raised on 5th of April, you will not raise, or you will get an iron only on 5th or 6th, right? It will not happen before 5th. Therefore, that transaction was not feasible in terms of e-invoicing regime compliance, and therefore thankfully government now has so-called removed the restriction. Now again, somebody can challenge that restriction was never in the law. It came through NIC, GSTN, and I mean that kind of discussion can happen. But if I go by whatever has been clarified, that restriction is no more there. So now you can. The only thing is that you still have to have that number before you transport the goods. That issue there, but otherwise, I think that is the only problem that will happen is that if you have an invoice dated 31st of March, but it is raised on 5th of April, we have to see how your GST returns will look like. So we have to see the actual system to figure out or to in fact even identify the problems, because it may go in your GC report of March, but you're raising an iron in the month of April. So your iron or the IRP portal will send the data to the GST report of April, though the invoice is dated March. Now, how will they address that kind of situation where there is a time lag between month? We have to see. I mean, we can't envisage every complication at this stage, but But as you start thinking more, you will come across a lot of such situations which have to be addressed in due course of time. Yeah. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I think next question is purely a guesswork from Shekhar Pulela. What is the tentative implementation date for entities less than 500 crores turnover? I think 2nd October. What?
So I think government is not that.
Yeah. Okay, because it's any let this 1st October stand and then we'll go for this. Narayan Rao Mittapalli, whether sub-users can be maintained in login like e-waybill site.
Yeah.
Somebody take this up. Yeah.
Yeah. So the e-invoicing portal is under development stage currently. Okay, every day they bring some new APIs, validations, versions. So we have to see whether they will. But more or less, they say that it will have all the facilities as in the e-waybill portal. So I think they will bring that facility there as well. But let's see practically when they get it.
Thank you. And the next question is from EC102859. Maybe he has to change the phone number to get the CPE credits. Is there a provision for sub-user creation in an e-invoice portal?
Already answered the same thing.
Yeah, same. It's almost same question. Sorry. Just looking at the number. Vittal Grandi, how the e-invoice will get impact the job work issues in case if it is not returned in 180 days?
In case it is so this question would have been valid few days ago when there was a technical validation of T+1 that you have to issue e-invoicing within T or T+1. But now government has given the liberty that you can issue e-invoice anytime technically, though there will be some clarification. So this can be handled now, but yes, it's a good question. We are also working on it technically.
Okay, just to add to what Sunil mentioned, I think in case of job worker, it's a DC transaction because there is no GST, right? So if that is the case, I mean, we need to understand the transaction of better detail. But if it's a pure play job work movement transaction which only has DC requirement and not a invoicing requirement because there is no GST, then that e-invoicing regulation will not apply. So we just have to see which leg he's referring to. But if there is no GST, then there is no question of any e-invoicing regulation coming into picture.
Just to add to that point, to his query, what I understand, he's telling that after 180 days. So if the goods are not returned within 180 days, so it becomes a taxable transaction retrospectively. So this again brings up props of questions which can be handled by government through clarifications.
Right.
Yeah. Same he is continued from Vittal Grandi. When less than 500 crore entities not allowed to register under e-invoice, how a RCM supplier can be registered if less than the prescribed turnover?
No, so even RCM supplier is not required to be registered unless his turnover is more than 500 crores. So it's not that every RCM supplier, so only for say GTA who have turnover of more than 500 crores, they are only supposed to get themselves registered, not every supplier.
So question from Ajay Kumar Chintalapudi. The limit of 500 crores, is it PAN based or GSTN based? Because one of my client has two divisions which have separate GST numbers but have a single PAN.
Yeah, so that word used by the government is aggregate turnover. Okay, now under GST, aggregate turnover is the PAN level consolidated turnover. Now, when I say PAN level turnover, it is not the Companies Act P&L turnover. That has to be derived from the accumulation of GST returns. So if there are 4 registrations, you add the sales of all the 4 registrations and then see what is the turnover, because that will have even the interstate stock transfer in that.
Yeah. I think Sandeep Gupta has got a follow-up question at a later also. So I'll just combine both the questions, or maybe 3 questions as a follow-up question. I'd like to read all, Sumit or Abhinav, and you decide how you'd like to answer. One is, he says, I wish to issue a credit note for sale happened before 30th September. Should I do it through e-invoice system compulsorily? e-way bill which is getting generated here is a central e-way bill. In that case, state e-way bill need not be generated, is a question mark. So I think 3 connected questions here asked.
Okay, so on the first query, uh, again, recently NIC has clarified in a session that the applicability of e-invoice is based on the invoice date. It can be credit note, debit note, or a tax invoice. So if the credit note is issued from on or before 1st October, it may be liable to e-invoicing. But okay, so one more follow-up point to it. There is no validation to the original invoice number. Like earlier we have in this GST 1, we have to give the original invoice number, correct? Now in e-invoicing, there is no requirement to report the original invoice number in respect to a credit note. So basically, you can generate a e-invoice for a credit note. But again, it's a good question. We can expect a clarification on this because this is a transitional issue.
So all the 3 are done, Sumit.
The e-way bill question is that once again, e-way bill which is getting generated here is central e-way bill. Okay, so there are 2 buckets in the e-way bills. Okay, so if I put in a way, one is that e-way bill along with e-invoicing. Okay, so for example, you're a normal tax invoice B2B customer, you're raising an e-invoice. Along with that, you are getting the e-way bill number as such as well. Okay, both the things are being managed by NIC. Okay, so there is no issue. Now, if there is any transaction which is not liable to e-invoicing, for example, a DC transaction, okay, delivery challan, and or a B2C transaction, in such cases, they have to independently go at NIC portal and generate the e-way bill number. But the central repository for e-way bill is e-way bill portal itself. Backend, they will communicate each other. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And in that case, a state e-way bill need not be generated.
State e-way bill. I didn't get story. State e-way bill, sir.
7:36 p.m. 2 questions you had put. No, the question what you
Okay,
answered.
sorry. I am seeing that. In that case, state e-way bill need not be generated. Sir, e-way bill more or less has the same limits across India. There are few states which have different limits. So you have to check the respective limit of the state and generate the e-way bill. So that requirement stays independent.
So, right. And I'll just go to Ajay Kumar's question. If my business was to supply only 0 rated or nil rated goods only, but the turnover exceeds limits, then e-invoice was mandatory or not? I think you covered.
Okay, again, that aggregate turnover definition includes everything. It includes taxable, exempt, nil rated. If I stretch it more, though it is litigative, it includes exempt supply and non-GST supply as well, more or less. So again, that calculation is little typical, but it includes all the turnover overall.
Yeah, thank you. Can I take the next question?
Yeah. Sir, whether there is any pre-fill option about details of recipient based on GST and of recipient.
Right.
So technically they are of the view that customer master is available on the portal in a way. So as of now, that facility may not be available on the tool at the government portal itself, but you have many ASP tools in the market which will provide you this functionality.
Yeah. So the Vittal Grandi next question, to get confirmed, there's no requirement of QR code for B2C transactions.
Yes, there is no liability to generate e-invoicing. I think I would again put it other way. There is no requirement legally, neither through the technical aspect. Both the way it is very clear for B2C, you cannot generate a e-invoice. Now, the issue with here is that the GSTR 1 which gets populated will be incomplete because IRP portal has only B2B data. So that's where government is working. Maybe subsequently they may bring B2C as well. But that's a separate independent issue.
I also just checked the YouTube. There were 16 people watching there also, but I didn't see any questions. But by the time I went there and came back, four questions. Okay, good. Yeah. Venkatramana T. Whether IRN to be generated on the same invoice date?
Again, just to clarify, the condition of T+1, that this was a condition by NIC technically. That condition is removed now. So you may generate later, but it is advisable that before movement of goods, you generate e-invoicing, and before issuing invoices to customer for services, you generate e-invoicing. That's a precautionary way of dealing with this.
Yeah. Vittal Granthi has just, I think, instead of asking any reference for the same, he asked, can reference for the same. Are you able to get the question?
I think this is linked to his previous question.
Yeah,
So
E-Waybill centrally.
yeah. Can reference for the same. Okay, we'll take it up later once. We can take up the next question once.
Yeah. Is sample invoice format available on website?
Yes, it is available. You can go to the e-invoicing portal, sandbox portal. You can do the sandbox testing as well, and they will give you a sample invoice as well. A specimen format.
Yeah.
There was one question, sir, which I by mistakenly answered, which I didn't answer technically. The first question, wherein someone asked me the difference between optional mandatory and optional. There was two technical terms. Okay, so optional field and there was one more question to it. So I'll just highlight that point, because, for example, one client is into the pharma industry, pharma company. So they have to maintain the batch number and expiry date in the invoice as per the legal metrology act or whatever their medical act. So to cater that requirement in the fields, they have provided this. But again, if somebody is opting this, then all the fields under that section gets mandatory automatically. So that's what her question was. I think his or her, that what is an optional mandatory type fields. So if you select if you select to disclose those expiry date, batch number, then those fields will get automatically mandatory. So you have to provide that. So this depends on the industry to industry.
When you fill a form, right, any online form that you fill, right, if you select this is applicable, then there are 10 more fields that gets popped up, right? So I think the same principle is applying there also.
Reference, Vittal Granthi, reference for not requirement of QR code for B2C transactions.
Okay, just to again clarify it more better way in detail. There was a provision. There is a provision today also that a dynamic QR code is to be printed on B2C transactions. Okay, that is nowhere linked to invoicing. That's a separate provision which government is, as of now, is not in a mood to implement or not in a condition to implement. They will implement it later. That's a separate discussion altogether. So let's not mix both together. Here it is a discussion of IRN. IRN is the invoice reference number. That is only applicable to B2B transactions, nothing to do with B2C. I hope I answered his question.
Yes. And Ajay Kumar asked for export of goods also have to generate e-invoice.
Yes, you have to generate invoice. There is but I just wanted to clarify again. I didn't clarify earlier. Legally, it is saying B2B transactions to registered person. But when we technically discuss about exports, we are doing sales to an unregistered party. So legally, there is no provision, but through the APIs, there is a provision. So again, government will bring in necessary amendments.
Sandeep Gupta has tried using the utility and generated the IRN, but the portal was not ready to generate waybill based on IRN. Also, cancellation of IRN was not possible.
Yeah, so there was a recent session by NIC with Bangalore department, Bangalore GST department, wherein they are in the process of bringing this functionality for normal users. Currently, this is available only for online API mode. So this is again they will again bring in the future course.
Yeah. I don't know whether you realized or not, but 21 questions have been answered by you. And the moment I'm thinking it's the last question, another one pops up. And just, okay, one more came. Okay, now Sriram Krishna Mallela, is e-invoice is on daily basis or is it on monthly basis? And then another question from him is that do we need to generate self e-invoice in case of reverse charge cases where the supplier issues invoice?
Okay, on the first query, if the intention of the government was to do it monthly, then they would have not brought invoicing.
Correct.
So we have to understand the background. Monthly already you are reporting to government. So the intention overall is real time, but due to the staggered implementation or the initial implementation, they will make it liberal, but maybe in future they will make it daily itself, T+1 condition.
So technically, so Sumit, just hold on. So just to technically answer your question, see, I mean, you can technically raise invoices throughout the month, and maybe once a month you can have e-invoicing. But then the catch is that you are not allowed to send invoice to a customer. You are not allowed to initiate movement of goods unless your invoice is an e-invoice. So even if you raise an invoice today, and you want to wait till month end before you can generate all e-invoice number at one go, you're practically saying that I will stop my movement of goods. I will not send the bill to the customer. So practically, so I mean hypothetically, theoretically, it's possible to upload the details in once in a month. But then that also means that you will then not be able to raise or send those invoices to the customer because that's not a valid invoice. So, and therefore, coming back to what Sumit mentioned, that it has to be real time. It may not be every second, but maybe same day you have to have the iron, because unless you have the iron, you will not be allowed to send that invoice to the customer. Or even if you send the invoice, that invoice has no validity from a GST angle. Plus, without invoice, you can't raise the e-way bill, issue e-way bill, and without e-way bill, you can't do a goods movement. So everything is linked, and therefore, I mean, we mentioned in the initial slide that invoicing is not only an IT requirement; it will also have an impact on your distribution or your sales perspective. Because while technically you will say I can postpone this event to month end, whatever, but since your goods movement is now tied to this e-invoice number generation, so therefore, for all practical purposes, you have to do it every day or on a real time if the volume is large. That's how it is. So with that,
So Parthasarthi Simhadri, in case of RCM, whose turnover is to be considered for e-invoicing?
Okay, so aggregate turnover definition excludes turnover or the supplies received under RCM. So aggregate turnover will not include the RCM turnover as a recipient. As a service provider, if you are under RCM, that has to be included anyway. I think one question we missed earlier, that whether e-invoicing is applicable on the self-invoices.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to clear it again that e-invoicing is applicable only to the suppliers, not the recipients. So it's a one-sided push. It's not double, like from both sides. So it is always from the supplier side. Never, as of now, never from the recipient side. So if for example, a legal company, advocate is raising invoice, and if his turnover is exceeding 500 crores, they will generate an invoice with the RCM without GST, but they will generate e-invoicing as well.
Hopefully, the last Sri Ramakrishna, I think he's just checking if supplier issue GST invoice stating that it's on reverse charge. I think it's a continuation of his earlier question.
Yes, yes.
Which I think
see, please appreciate the law is not changing. The GST law still remains the same. What is only changing is that on certain category of invoices, you need to have that iron QR code. And that's linked to e-way bill now. So a lot of things, a lot of provisions will still remain the same. It's just that there is an additional requirement from an invoicing standpoint. That's a crux of it.
Yeah. I think luckily we have one question in the chat, Sumit, from Mahesh Jawar. I just asked him to put it because it has come on the last. I'd just like to check if you want to
Yeah, we'll take it up, sir.
comments on that.
Can you just narrate the question, sir? I'm not able to view that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, not a problem. In fact, I had a small work. I got it done in between. Okay. Mahesh Jawar says also it would be against the provision of time of supply if T+1 is given in case of goods. Just a comment.
Yeah, sir. He is technically correct, but again, there can be other discussions on like job work. One of the person explained. So there is movement of goods there, but again, it is post the supply, post the movement. So there can be various scenarios which we cannot envisage here. But yes, his point is overall correct as of now.
Yes, thank you very much, Sumit. Thank you very much, Abhinav. I'm just sharing a screen. Hope it's visible to you. Look again, this would have been a wonderful thing had we did it at branch. Okay, but unfortunately we can't do it. So Abhinav first. Again, there's no order. I just what I got it. I was displaying. So I'm sorry for if there's any protocol miss. So in this virtual meet, a virtual thank you note to Abhinav and definitely a virtual thank you note to even Sumit also I'd like to give. Sumit, in fact, Sumit, I don't know whether Aarti Karnani who is working with me, I was trying to get in touch with her to have you, but somehow it was not happening. So finally we got you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Satish, sir, like
some of the mails also we exchanged, but the date was not coming from. Some miscommunication happened, and then the COVID struck. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, Sumit. And I promise you, whenever the lockdown opens, I'll ensure that these certificates properly framed are sent to your office. It's a promise from my side. Thank you very, very much. I think one question, jate chalte chalte. Is there any exemption to issue e-invoice based on the taxable value? Can we skip e-invoice for less value? I think.
as of now, there is no such provision or exemption, but maybe government may listen him. He never.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
government is quite receptive to a lot of feedback. So if you have suggestions, they keep on having seminars in various cities where the people from GSTN office are also present. So while GSTN is not the nodal authority to make any decision in terms of coverage and exemption, but what they do that they will pass on that feedback to the GST office or CBIC. So if you have any suggestion, in terms of exemption, in terms of practical challenges that you foresee, I think you should not hesitate and keep on sharing that with the GSTN and government officials. And I think there are enough seminars, happening, which have been organized by GSTN or where GSTN people are part of. So use that platform to reach out to these set of people, because at least what we have seen, a lot of issues have been addressed. It's not that they're not receptive. The only request which they have not agreed so far is to defer the invoicing by three more months. I think they are very adamant on 1st October deadline. In fact, this question has been asked many times, and every time the response is, boss, you have 3 weeks left. Din raat kaam karo, isko implement karo. Don't sort of ask for any further extension. But your guess is as good as mine. What will happen? But I think otherwise they have been quite receptive, and I think you should appreciate that. Things will not be smooth to start with. Things are never smooth in India. You first implement something, and then you figure out a way to navigate and survive. So I think e-invoicing will have the same story. I mean, even e-way bill, right? When it was introduced first time, the site crashed, right? And then again they reintroduced e-way bill, relaunched the portal after a couple of months, and now it's quite successful, right? It's fairly smooth, and there is no major issue, at least which I have come across, from an operational standpoint. So I think you might expect some glitches. Now the some glitches is a very subjective term. I mean, it's a phrase. Somebody will say it's somebody will have a lot of grievances, but all I'm saying is that even if, okay, the best case scenario is postponed, say, by a couple of months, it's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when, right? So start preparing, because even if they say 1st December, you don't have much time. It's not that it's a plug and play, right? Then that we have discussed enough issues which have to be addressed before you can say you are ready for invoicing. So sorry, I think I overshot.
I think I agree with you, and see, being a professionals, we should in fact welcome such move. Let it come with some difficulties, then itself we get some professional opportunities also. And it's better that once the due date approaches, we also start learning about it. Now today, if I announce that it's 1st December, and then I have a program, even this 84 year and 16 there, people would not have come. Because they would have been busy filing the tax audit report. Okay, so I think it's a good date. And thank you very, very much, both Abhinav and Sumit. Yeah, it was wonderful. For me, I'm not much into GST because always my full form of GST is General Satish Tax, because I keep troubling him always. But he has made me sit through all the GST courses and all, and thoda GST aane lag gaya hai mujhe bhi. Thanks to him and others. But excellent session. I think Satish bhai, you can just finish off your duty so that we can finish it up. And just before Satish says, tomorrow again, Gururaj Acharya sir is coming with some issues and tax audit. Wonderful questions he has posed, and all the items which he'll be discussing. Yes, we have put it in the Hyderabad branch website. So request all of you to be on time. Because he's a very learned speaker. And I think tomorrow we are starting the program from 5 o'clock instead of our usual 6 o'clock, because he wanted to have a 3-hour program, because every tax audit seminar we are unable to cover. And he's also talking about the standards of tax audit and everything. So it should be a one-off beautiful program tomorrow. Kindly register and attend. Again, tomorrow, those who wish to have CP hours, kindly pay and attend. And those who don't wish to have, I'll wait till 5:30, and then I will definitely share the meeting ID and password. But again, if I tell now only that I'm going to share, no one will pay. So those who want to pay can just pay off. But for others, we'll be definitely sharing the meeting ID password, because we want more and more people to get knowledge. That's the only intention. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Once again, on behalf of Hyderabad branch, I once again thank both the speakers for their well-detailed point-by-point presentation actually on the topic. I hope all our members will be benefiting from this session in their, day-to-day practice and the coming periods very shortly. Once again, thank both the speakers, Abhinav and Sumit, and our guest speaker, CA Satish Anna, who presented his views for the benefit of members, and our branch chairman, Pankaj Kumar Trivedi Garu, and all our members who presented over here through Zoom. Thank you once again. Bye for that.
Tomorrow's session is at 5 or 6. I think it's 5 o'clock. I'll come back. It's 5 o'clock only. I'll come. Yeah, it's 5 o'clock, definitely. So thank you very much, Sumit.
Yeah.
And Sumit and Abhinav have one request. Kindly share the PPT, because we can put it in Hyderabad branch website. And the recording of this program will also be placed in the live YouTube channel. It will be there for some more time for people to see. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah.
And hope to see
Thank you,
soon.
Abhinav. Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye for the day. Good night. Thank you, Anna. Pankaj Anna.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.